In today's video, I'm going to explain how mortgages work in the Czech Republic. Hi, my name is Robin, I'm founder of Expats Finance, and since 2014 I've been helping foreigners with getting financing and mortgage process and buying real estate in the Czech Republic. Main purpose of mortgages is also to get financing and buying real estate generally more affordable. Interest is one of the main costs you will see when buying a property, and it is spread over the whole duration of a mortgage. As I said, 20 to 30 years, and typically until your age of 70. Important fact is to mention that mortgages are designed for buying residential properties. For commercial properties, this is a different type of loan, it's following a different type of a law, and this is not what we're going to discuss in today's video. Buying a real estate might be one of your big goals when living in the Czech Republic. I like to say that buying real estate in Prague is only the most expensive transaction you will ever make, besides raising kids, I guess. For buying real estate, you need a down payment that is 10 to 20% depending on your age. In Czech Republic, the age threshold is 36 years old. If you are 36 and above, you need to invest at least 20% from your own funds. However, exceptions are possible. One thing I need to stress out is how much the bank will be able to lend you. If your monthly income is, let's say, 100,000 Czech crowns in the net, banks will be able to borrow you or lend you 50, even 60,000 per month on repayments. Different banks have different limits, and it's up to you to decide whether this is viable and healthy for your family household. I'm a mortgage advisor, I'm not a financial planner, so if you want to get as high mortgage as possible, I'll be able to help. However, make sure it's sustainable and healthy for your future family. Getting the financing in Czech Republic, I'm sure you can do on your own. However, you will have your life much easier if you get help from a mortgage advisor. Mortgage advisors, such as myself, we're paid by the banks, and we have the same commission from all the banks. We are paid upon delivering the mortgage and signing with the client, working half for you and half for the banks. Now, I like to explain that speaking to mortgage advisor is like speaking to all the banks at once, because we will do the market research and present you with the options. As mortgage advisors, we would be asking questions such as: what is your income? Where do you come from? What's your nationality? Residency status? What are your expenses? How long you're in the Czech Republic? And based on all these questions, we will be able to suggest the best banks to finance, what are the interest rates, present you the options, and the selection is up to you. Moving on to selecting the best mortgage, that goes down to market analysis. Now, check what are all the bank offers, which ones offer the cheapest rate, but also check for other conditions, typically life insurance. Very often, if you go to your home bank and you would get the best offer you ask for, they might not explain you very well that, oh, and there is a life insurance as a condition. Life insurance will make the interest rate go a little bit lower, but it also costs quite a lot of money on monthly costs. So yes, the rate will be lower, but the overall costs will increase. Fixation is another topic we're discussing with clients, and it means how long the interest rate remains the same, whether we're going to fix the rate for 2-3 years, which typically happens when the rates are relatively high, 4 or 5%, and when the rates are low. I know the lowest rate I did was 1.49 back, 7 years ago, and the client fixed for 10 years. Then there are other factors to consider, such as speed of the bank and how big is the bank, and those factors which are not so easy to quantify. Sometimes the inquiry from clients is, I have just 2 weeks until end of reservation contract, I need the financing as fast as possible. Well, in that case, we might not be able to go to some of the banks because they're known that they take much longer time. So the good comparison should also include what are the other factors. As I said, speed, other costs, interest rates, fixations, and maybe English friendliness. How digital is the process? A lot of things to talk about. Now we're proceeding to getting specific options. You should get at least 2 to 3 offers from the banks, provided either by you if you go to multiple banks, or ideally by a mortgage advisor. One more thing to consider is the total duration of the loan. By default, it's typically until your age of 70 or maximum 30 years, but if your income is high enough and if you want to repay as little money on interest as possible, then of course you can shorten it for 20 years, 15 years, 10 years, whatever is okay for your family cash flow. Fun story, once I had a client who purchased the property for around 12-13 million with mortgage around 10, and he opted for a duration of 5 years. His monthly repayments were around 200,000 Czech crowns per month, and he even contacted me after a few years saying, "Hey Robin, I managed to save few millions, can I repay the loan even faster?" He was a CEO of one corporation. Last thing maybe to consider, I know a lot of people say, "Oh, but I don't want to overpay double on the total interest." I mean, you borrow 8 million, and if you look into the contracts, it looks like you are going to repay 16 million in total back to the bank, including interest. That sounds like a really bad deal, but it's not. The problem is that these calculations are done assuming the rate will be the same for a whole 30 years, and that's not the case because of fixation. After a few years, the rate recalculates according to the current market. And also, even if that would be the case, I would ask how much will be the property's worth in 30 years. I'm sure it will be more than double, more than triple. I don't know what the price will be, and I guess we will be paying it in Bitcoins or any other digital currency. So to me, yes, I'm biased, paying double to the bank is not necessarily a problem, as long as it will get you to the goals you want to have in your life. We found the cheapest offer which you like, and it's time to start preparing documents. Now, documents is a little bit of input from your side, and I like to say to clients, this is about 30 to 60 minutes of your time investment, and typically the most bureaucratical part, because we need to satisfy the bank's needs for checklists. Documents we're going to need is your passport, residency card if you have one. I know as EU members, you can be living here for 10 years and not to have residency card. It's still possible, no worries. But for non-EUs, you should have employee card, long-term residency, permanent residency, even better, but not necessarily. Documents about your income depend mainly on the type of work or what is the source of income. If you're an employee, we would need income certificate from your HR. There are specific forms the bank will provide. You send it to your HR, they fill it out, send it back. That's the document. Sometimes they will also need work contract. If you're self-employed, bank would like to see at least 1 or ideally 2 years of tax returns from previous years. If you were a business owner, the fun begins because the bank will require the company tax returns and whichever way you pay yourself as an income. That's for an episode on its own because myself, I know the struggle and it's really complicated to explain in this quick video. We will also need to show the bank 3 to 6 months of bank statements in PDF, downloaded from your internet banking. Common mistake, don't do transaction history. You really have to download month by month PDF of a bank statement. If your income is paid to a different bank account, I mean in a Revolut or in any other country, that's also possible. Just get a similar version of what the Czech bank statements would look like. These are about the main documents we would need to get yourself pre-approved for a mortgage, because the bank needs to know your profile, that you have income, and they will do some due diligence, making sure there are no ongoing debts or, any defaulted debts in the debt registry. And one fun thing, unlike in the UK or in the US, there is not such a thing as a credit score or credit history, because if you have credit cards or other loans, it doesn't really help you with getting mortgages. It works the opposite way. Whatever you have on monthly repayments, that reduces the maximum mortgage you can get. With these documents, this should satisfy the bank, and depends if you already have found the property. No problem if you haven't. And that's actually the suggested way how we recommend to work with clients. I will say a little bit later, but this is considered pre-approval. If you have already found a property, the other documents to provide are with regards to the specific real estate you want to buy. At this point, we get in touch with the agency and we ask them for documents such as deed of ownership, confirming who is the owner, draft of reservation contract not signed. Don't sign your reservation contract before the bank's feedback. And the next step, please. I will explain again why it is so crucial. We also need to confirm if there is any mortgage on the seller's property. If there is, no worries, as long as it is a regular mortgage or regular loan. If there is execution, however, which is default of the seller's profile or insolvency, that's a very problematic to get financing. So make sure you understand, or your broker or your lawyer understands, what types of limitations are on the property you want to buy. Special attention if you want to buy a family house or a cottage or anything which is basically not a flat. Because one of the most common problems is that the real estate of the property doesn't correspond with the legal state. I mean, typically there is a building which is realistically standing there, but it is not on cadastre, on the land registry. If you don't have the property, it's not a problem. The bank will just check all your personal details, all the income, and then once you find the property, they will add it to the mortgage. Such mortgage pre-approval is valid for 3 months, and if you don't find the property by this time, no worries, the application will automatically expire and you can do it again. There are no fees connected with that. At this point, we have most likely all the documents for the mortgage application. We compile it, create a mortgage application, which you will sign either digitally or physically. Banks are still old-fashioned, so they might need you to print out the document, sign it, scan back. We send it to the banker along with a cover letter and explain your mortgage case. When we send all the documents and the application to the banker is going to double check that we didn't do any mistake, they have all the documents up to date, that they didn't run out of validity. Typically, income certificate from your HR is valid for 30 days. Bank statements also needs to be up to date, so if we start moving on to another month, we need to update the banker with the bank statements, and they are going to check the debt registry. If you didn't have any loans in the Czech Republic, no worries. I like to say, no loan history, no problem. And in case you haven't found a property yet, it's still okay, because the bank is going to check your profile and they're going to wait for the property to come. This is what I call pre-approval, because if the bank would have had any problems with you as a client, they would say it already at this point. You have found a property, which is great. This is the most difficult part of the whole process. On the client's side, you need to select a lot of properties and find the one which you are going to buy. Now it's found, and we should make sure the bank is okay with the valuation. Valuation can be done by physical assessment or online assessment. This is done in 1 or 2 days if it is online. If it is physical, the bank needs to send their valuer or appraiser in person. That's going to take about 1 week. Let's make an example. You buy a property for 10 million. We do online valuation, and the online valuation confirms 10 million. Good, we can proceed to the next stage. This is the best case scenario. But maybe the online valuation will come shorter at 9 million. In this case, well, you shouldn't have signed the reservation contract yet, so you can use this as a negotiating tool and you can ask for 1 million discount. Most likely will not work, but you can try. The next step would be to send there the bank's valuer in person. The bank is going to go there, it will take a little bit more time, as I said, 1 week, and they are going to come back with updated value. It is possible they will increase it from 9 to 10 and we can proceed. Or the bank will say, it's more like 9.7 and this is our final say. With this information, you can again come back to the agency and say, guys, I would really like to buy the property, but the bank says it's only 9.7 and I cannot afford to pay the difference, because the bank is going to lend you 80 or 90% from the valuation amount. With the physical valuation being at 9.7 million, the bank is going to lend you 80 or 90% from that amount, and the difference you need to pay from your funds. If you are going to get less money from the bank, for example, you always aimed to get only 5 million or 6 million or even 7 million from the bank, this difference doesn't matter for the mortgage, because the threshold is 80% or 90%, and for this amount As long as the loan-to-value ratio is up to 80%, the bank is going to be okay. Now, valuation is mainly important for you to know before you sign the reservation contract, to know how much of own funds you need to invest into the purchase. Another important factor is that the bank, especially for family houses, will set conditions under which the property is acceptable for the bank as a security. Very often, this is going to be the access to the property. In majority of the cases, this is not a problem if you are accessing your family house from a public road. But sometimes you need to go through someone else's piece of property, and there needs to be a legal burden on that plot of land. Usually it's covered, but if it is not covered, your lawyer should have found out by now, or the bank is going to find out and they're going to set it into the valuation report as a condition for the property to be accepted. And again, I need to stress out that it is very important not to sign a reservation contract until the valuation has been done, to make sure you know for sure how much money you can come from the bank, and also that there are no other legal burdens or limitations on the property. Fun fact, just recently we had a client who was buying a flat in Prague, and the flat had a gas boiler outside of the flat. Imagine it was, 120 square meters, but the boiler, or in Czech kotel, was actually on a hallway, in a different area, a little locker room, which technically belonged to a different flat. And the bank, of course, found this out, and they said, no, we are not going to finance this without this hotel boiler being moved back to the flat, which is a very important information to know before you sign reservation contract. And with this information in mind, the client backed out from the deal because that was too complicated. Valuation is done, and at this point we're moving to legal, to signing the reservation contract. Please don't rely on ChatGPT understanding the reservation contract and doing some legal revisions. I've seen that before, it doesn't work, and there is definitely no liability for that. Always hire a lawyer for the transaction to protect your best interest. Yes, I know that if there is an agency, they are going to provide all the legal support. They are going to draft the reservation contract, purchase contract, escrow contract, but it's their lawyer. So if things go south, you can guess who they're going to protect. And with this in mind, and if you're buying a property for millions of Czech crowns, always invest a little bit of money into the lawyer, because in 95% cases, there is not going to be any problem. But if there is, getting a lawyer later is usually too late. How much the lawyer costs? Typically 15, 20, 25,000 to check and cover the whole real estate transaction. We do it for our clients for a fixed price of 15,000 Czech crowns if you want to get our legal support. The contract has been presented to you by the real estate agency, your lawyer checked it, and now you might want to sign the reservation contract. That brings me to the 3 golden rules to do always before signing the reservation contract. Little exceptions might apply, but the 3 things to do is: number 1, get pre-approved by the bank. Make sure that the banker saw your documents, they checked your debt registries, they checked your income, your residency, and there is not going to be any problem after signing the reservation contract, because that's too late. Second, the valuation has been done, especially if you need 80 or 90% financing from the bank. It is crucial to know that the bank is okay with the value of the property and the price you're buying it for. 3, lawyer. Get a lawyer to review the documents to make sure you understand the reservation contract, that there is nothing hidden. The liabilities are similar for you as a buyer and also for the seller. Most commonly, there is this mistake that there is a penalty for you as a buyer if you cancel the purchase, but there is no penalty for the seller if they change their mind. So this is one of the main things, or first things, we do add to the reservation contract in the legal revision. We are almost at the end. You have signed the reservation contract already, bank did the valuation already before, and now the agency is going to provide the drafts of purchase and escrow contracts. Purchase contract specifies all the details about the transfer of ownership from the old owner to you as a new owner. Escrow contract is a middleman's account, typically with a lawyer or with a bank or with a notary, but most commonly with a lawyer, where all the money is held until the transaction is over and you are the owner, to make sure it's safe for both parties. When the mortgage is approved, you're going to receive the mortgage documentation, all in Czech unfortunately, and it's job of your mortgage advisor or Google to explain it to you so that you understand everything what's happening and what is in the mortgage contract. The most important part of the mortgage contract is, of course, interest rate, repayments, duration of the mortgage, but drawdown conditions. Drawdown is the process when the bank will physically send the money from their account to the escrow or to the seller. Drawdown is like a big payment order where you're sending a lot of millions to the other party. Obviously, the bank is a little bit worried to send the money somewhere where it doesn't belong, probably same as you are, and they have created a list of drawdown conditions. Most commonly, drawdown conditions consist of few things, such as sign the purchase contract, sign the escrow contract, pay your part of the money, do insurance for the property, and sign pledge contract. Pledge contract, by the way, is security over the apartment for the bank. If you default on the mortgage, they have rights towards that property. Once you fulfill those drawdown conditions, the bank is fine to finally send the money. To summarize, your mortgage is approved, you understood the contracts, and it's time to meet for signing. For the signing day, we aim to get it all done in one go. First, we meet in our office to sign the mortgage documentation, and then we continue to meet the seller at the lawyer's office. There we sign the purchase, the escrow, and we make sure that you leave the meeting knowing everything that is happening. Next steps after this meeting is typically to send your part of the money. On an example, the purchase price is 10 million, you want to get 80, or you have already secured 80% from the bank, you have already paid 300,000 as a reservation. At this point, you are left to pay 1.7 million from your bank account. When you do that, this is one of the drawdown conditions, and I would need to get to the bank the other drawdown conditions. We will get them signed copy of the purchase contract, escrow, we must make sure the property is insured, and other drawdown conditions which might arise from your specific situation. When the drawdown happens, the money is sent to the escrow or to the middleman's account, and the change of ownership starts, which takes about 20 to 25 days, and this is the last period of waiting, because when this part is done, you are to organize a handover with the agent or with the owner to get keys of the property. Once the transfer of ownership is finished, the escrow agent, bank, notary, lawyer will release the money to the seller, and you get the keys at pretty much the same time. If you need to have the keys sooner, make sure you mention this before you sign the reservation contract. If the property is empty, then perhaps you can get the keys even before the change of ownership has finished. Maybe. Don't hesitate to ask if this could help you. Congratulations! With this, you became a property owner. Your mortgage repayments already starts because the bank starts to charge you interest from the moment they release the money to the seller or to the escrow. So count that the first month you might need to pay both the interest to the bank and maybe your current rent. So for the first month there is to be expected a little bit more of payments, but from the next month onwards you're going to have the same repayments as in the mortgage contract. Congratulations, you've become a property owner. This is most of the information about mortgages in the Czech Republic, but of course I understand if you're buying a real estate in another country where you might not speak the local language, it can sound very daunting. Don't hesitate to reach out for help, especially if it is free. For the mortgage advisor, we are paid by the banks. The lawyer might cost a little bit, but buying a real estate for 10 million, don't save on the lawyer. If you plan to do the purchase on your own, at least the one thing to take away from this video is always get a lawyer on your side. My name is Robin, I'm founder of Expats Finance, and since 2014 I've been helping foreigners with buying real estate in Prague and in the whole Czech Republic. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out or drop a question into the comment. and see you in the next video.